So you should have a message that the meeting is now live streaming. It will take a few minutes to catch up with us, but it will be recording everything from the next couple of minutes. So I think we can probably crack on.
Okay, shall I kick off and start by welcoming everyone to the resources meeting?
So you should have a message that the meeting is now live streaming.
Yeah,
it will take a few minutes to catch up with us, but it will be.
Okay. So we last met, I think, on 9th of April, and we can look at the minutes of that meeting in a moment. But do we have any apologies for absence? Alexa, do we have any apologies?
We do have apologies from Graham, and I'm sorry, but I've just messed up my sound. I will be with you in 1 second.
Right, how's that? Is that better?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so apologies only from Graham, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So the minutes of the last meeting, which, as I said, were on 9th of April, are we able to show those on screen?
I can try, but I'm not convinced. No, I'm afraid I can't because I'm on the wrong computer. Apologies.
Okay, well, let me see if I can bring it from my screen.
You need that or not?
Sorry? Say again?
It's backwards, isn't it? No, that's right. I was just showing it on my phone, but it turns it around, it mirrors it.
Okay. Right, I haven't got it either at the moment, I don't think. It's the wrong one. Okay. Have we got hard copy available of those minutes?
Yes, I have a hard copy.
Would it help if I just...
Do you want me to skip through them?
Yeah, I mean, basically, there were no public questions at that meeting. We had apologies from Chris Owen and Philip Basterman, and we approved the minutes from the meeting on the 13th of February. There were no matters arising. Alex Dunlop declared a pecuniary interest as AJ Dunlop Limited, being a supplier to the council reference community bus, and Anita Cranmer declared an interest as a trustee of Better Connected Beaconsfield. We had a section on the suspension of town hall contracts and services, which I think was fairly straightforward. It included the public activities at the town hall, closure of the conveniences in Windsor End, and also notices being put up saying that we were advising people not to allow children to play on the equipment at Malthouse Square. The community bus service was suspended until further notice, and cleaning of the town hall was also cut back from its present sort of daily activity, I think, to once a week or once per fortnight. We noted the fact that the office-based staff had been switched to working from home with full access to systems, and that an email address, info@beaconsfieldtowncouncil.gov.uk, had been set up, which is accessible by all staff to allow for ad hoc inquiries, etc. The council handyman, John Bull, was still carrying out his duties as per normal. And we noted that devolved services were also continuing. Pitch maintenance program at Woburn Green was brought forward due to the cancellation of the remainder of the football season. So then there was a section on the community bus being cancelled. And then there were some aspects in relation to requests for expenditure. The most significant, I think, was the the problem to do with the roof at the town hall. And there was a question mark being raised about scaffolding, which we'll hear more about this evening. There were also some items of expenditure that have been requested from Better Connected Beaconsfield, and it was resolved that BTC would cover items of expenditure requested up to a total of 1,000, and the clerk was asked to manage this activity. We also noted, I think, that during this period that it was likely that both Jeanette and Alexa would be more actively involved with assisting with the coordination efforts of PCB. And this was mainly due to a slowdown in activity at the town hall. And that basically was the minutes of the part 1 meeting. Everyone happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's take those as read and assume that any matters arising will be dealt with under this evening's agenda. So item 5, do we have any declarations of interest?
I should probably declare again that I am the chairman of Better Connected Beaconsfield, since that will possibly come up.
I
Okay,
should declare an interest in the Parkway strip, which I've declared before.
okay. Any more? Okay, I will declare an interest in item 9, reference the certificate of lawfulness in respect of the War Memorial, where it has been noted that the award of a contract to develop and design a statue to commemorate World War I was awarded to my partner. So simply to keep the record straight, I mention that as a declaration of interest. Okay, if we move on to the financial statements for year ended 31st of March, these are in draft form and I think were sent out earlier on this afternoon. The headline basically is that the accounts show, I think, a small surplus of something like £138, is it? For the year ending 31st of March. And that takes into account the fact that we had quite a considerable deficit during the year associated with town hall lettings. However, we were able to manage that through the other sort of areas of expenditure where we were able to cut back and to eventually balance the budget. It may be useful for the town clerk to mention some items in relation to ring fence expenditure, etc., because I know that this sometimes sort of slips off the radar, and you know, we later on are sort of thinking, well, have we made adequate provision? So perhaps you'd like to just mention one or two of those items.
Okay. I think you'll note in your budget report, yes, we were short on income on the town hall. We had a void for a long time in one of our rental units. It took an awfully long time to get one of our existing tenants moving from one area to another, but it really was a huge loss of interest. So we did cut our cloth and try and cut back as much as we could to deal with that. But it is one of the ongoing issues that we have with running the town hall in a building that's becoming less and less useful, usable, and clients, you know, wanting to rent are not as either lucrative or available, and that's become even worse this year during the corona pandemic, but it wasn't good last year either. So that was so we've managed to balance it. I may still have a few bits and pieces coming in, but I think we're pretty much there. But if you look at your balance sheet that you've got, you will see that we have the general fund, which is our sort of main fighting fund, but we also have earmarked reserves, and we have ring-fenced funds. Ring-fenced funds are money which is not ours, effectively. It has been ring-fenced for specific purposes. It might be grant income or similar things. So I've actually done your printout of our ring-fence funds at the moment. So we've still got some county councillors' funds, so they're not our funds, they are Anita's funds from her county councillor allowance, and typically they can be held by us for the councillor's use, and she will decide as and when to spend them and what she spends them on. We've got our World War Commemoration Fund, which is standing at just over £3,000. So this includes money that was raised in the last couple of years for a number of things. And actually, Jeanette, that we did get 150 quid recently for the tea that we were going to have on VE Day. Obviously everything that was just as everything got cancelled, so I've stuck it in this ring fence fund as it was money from South Bucks, I think just before South Bucks finished, so I've stuck it in there for the time being, unless they ask for it back. The community bus project, you'll notice, which we'll talk about later, is showing as overdrawn, but that's because there's money due in from L&Q Beacon, who helped fund that project, that trial this year. But how they typically fund is that they'll give you 50% at the front, and it's the same when you do LAF money or anything with Bucks as well. They'll give you 50% up front. They're probably expecting us to match fund whatever that project is, or whatever the terms are that we've engaged with them on. And then once the project finishes and we report, which Jeanette and I did a few months ago on to L&Q, then the money comes in. So I've actually already had the money in from L&Q, but it didn't come in until May. So it's showing as outstanding on the year end, and that fund is showing as overdrawn. Also, I know that Jeanette will probably talk about her report later, where she's showing a surplus, and I haven't actually shown it as a surplus because I haven't put the full council contribution in, because Jeanette was able to raise some other contributions from around the town, because I'm penny pinching to try and balance the books for last year. I haven't put the full town council contribution in, and we can discuss that at a future stage. So I'm showing that as a break even, effectively. Hotspur Bank Nature Reserve, I think we finally got our funding in from, which is a DEFRA grant that's been backdated for several years, but that money is spent, so they're showing 2,000 there, but we use that to pay for the sessions down at the nature reserve with Chiltern Rangers. So again, it's not really our money, but that's why it's shown as a ring fence fund. You can also see I've got all the water fountain money. So this is the money from Bucks and from the WI and Plastic Free Beaconsfield and everyone who has contributed to that project so far. So there's almost £10,000 there, which I'm holding on that. And then there is the MVAS project, which for some reason is showing at £77, whereas I'm hoping that breaks even. But again, I've just got some paperwork to clear up that didn't come through until this, I think the early part of the year, May, perhaps. I think we got the final paperwork. So that's our ring fence fund. So that's all money that sits in our account, but it's not ours to spend. So I show it differently. And then on the reserves that we have earmarked, these are things which I sort of tried to tidy them up a lot last year. And so they are looking relatively sensible. there were a few things less sensible last year, but it's tidy. So we've got our reserve for election expenses. I didn't make the transfer because we would have accrued another £1,000, but obviously we haven't had an election, so I thought we could probably shelve that expenditure for this year, and hope that we have an election next year. We have a few £1,000s in there for the town plan. As you can see, that's been in there for a while. We have a reserve for Woburn Green Lane, which arguably I could use, but I've been putting that towards the pitch improvement that we've been doing down there. We did actually have quite a lot of vandalism down there this year, so I might use that to go ahead with the CCTV or something like that. We have the Christmas lights replacement fund, which is going down each year because Jeanette does arrange to fix things that need fixing, which has to be done, and I have made an accrual against that at the moment because we're just replacing something at the moment ahead of this year. We have our reserve that we've been building for devolved, the devolved service of mowing. So we've got 60,000 in there, or 62,000 at the moment, which, you know, if the funding does cease to come from the powers that be, then we can continue to mow and do hedges and do as we need there. We still have £6,000 to sort out the posts, the rotting posts around the War Memorial, and we finally have a plan which is approved by the Conservation Officer, and Jeanette is getting tenders for doing that at the moment. I had a much fancier plan, but it came in at several times more than the reserve, and so I've been suitably told off by Jeanette for that. We have 30,000 put aside for replacing equipment at Malthouse Square, and again, that is something which, if we're not already inviting tenders, we're very close to inviting tenders for that. But it's likely to cost a lot more than £30,000 to replace that, considering what's gone on down at Malthouse Square in the last month or so. Our plans are going to need to change. We've put in a temporary bund at the moment after the traveller encroachment, but that's going to need to become permanent. We're going to need droppable bollards or an overhead barrier. So the costs of that are going to mount as we go. Some of these other reserves are historic. I've left them in there, but I'm not necessarily sure what they're for. The environmental reserve, the roadside trees, and an improvements reserve, but we've got sort of 6,000, 7,000 there. The Walkwood management plan continues. I think we probably have, although there's 11,000 left there, I think in the past, I think you've absorbed costs on an annual basis that perhaps should have been written off against that plan, but we are where we are. So it's there in the reserve and we can use it. It's not a ring fence fund, it's earmarked, so we can use that as we wish. And then we have capital reserve, 2 capital reserves for the town hall, which obviously if we do get to the stage of having to pay for dilapidations, those sums may go some way towards it, but the chances are that the dilapidations will exceed that. So that's balance sheet items, and as I say, we have managed to balance the books, but it's been a strange year last year, and it's going to be an even stranger and tougher year financially this year.
Okay, thanks. Anyone got any questions on the draft accounts? No?
Also, could I just say, I did have other apologies from Clive, but I'm sorry, I just forgot to mention it. He's sending me messages of what he'd like to vote on, but he can't vote because he's not here.
Right, okay, let's move on to item 7, which is the update on town council services, notably devolved services, safety and service inspections, and pitch maintenance. Alexa, I think it's down to you again.
Okie dokie. So Our devolved services, most of that we put out to Amersham Town Council. They have been working throughout lockdown, although they have been slower than they would normally because of the requirements to social distance and that sort of thing. Whilst the town hall was empty, I did allow them to use our kitchen and loo facilities there, so that they weren't having to constantly go back and forth to Amersham in between doing work for us, which has proved quite helpful. So that is ongoing, and I haven't been aware of any particular loss of service. I haven't had huge complaints on it or anything like that, so I hope that that's okay. John Bull continues to do everything that he does. So defibs are checked every week. He's in the office every day, checks the town hall. He checks all the playgrounds and all the usual things that he does. The pitch maintenance is ongoing, and we have grass growing at the moment, which should be very, very lush and lovely after all the rain that we've just had. I did have a plan to perhaps replace goalposts, but I think we'll wait and see what's going on and whether people are coming back and how that is likely to pan out. But I've just realised that Patrick's arrived. There's been a huge amount of guidance from the FA on what you are allowed to do as a football host and what you have to do as a football team. So Vibba has forwarded to me today all the risk assessments from the various football teams of what they are saying they are going to do to mitigate the risks. I mean, the main problem that we've got is that I can't really see how we can open the changing rooms within the guidance. So that is an issue. I mean, obviously the guidance is all to stop people meeting and gathering in such a way that a virus could be transmitted. I can't operate a one-way system, or the guidance tends to say you need an entrance and an exit, and they can't be the same. So I can't do that. I can't do that down at the public toilets. At the public toilets where we have had some complaints that they're not open, I think you'll know that the alleyway that goes down to the public toilets, the path is less than 1.5 meters. So it's not possible really to operate a system without somebody there monitoring it all day long. And we don't have the staff to do that. It seems apparent that you're not allowed to just put up a sign. Insurance won't cover you and various things. So you can't just put up a sign saying you're on your own, take your chances. So unfortunately, those facilities remain shut, but we have yet to understand from the football teams, particularly how they are planning to manage football, especially with children, if they don't have toilet facilities. So that's an evolving situation, and we'll see what the information is, the risk assessments from the teams say. But actually we're looking quite full up for both Saturdays and Sundays, and as our pitches improve in quality, there is quite a shortage of pitches in Bucks and South Bucks. So they will, over the next couple of years, start to be full all the time, or certainly there'll be a requirement for them, and we will have to look at replacing the goalpost this year, I suggest, with removable goalposts with sockets that can be adjusted so that you don't get wear on the same part of the pitch. And the ones that we have at the moment are really not up to scratch. But that's that's kind of where we are. The town hall is not open to the public because it compromises the permanent tenants that we have. And I think maybe I'm skipping on to the next bit. Actually, I'll leave that, and I think I'm done on council services, and whether we want to move on to item 8.
Unless there's any comments anyone wants to make on item 7. Okay, let's move on to item 8 then.
Okay. So what I was going to say, was just following on to say, is some of our tenants are back, and some in the hall. We haven't opened to the public those facilities of where people hire out the main chamber, because obviously our permanent tenants we have a duty of care to them, and they pay us income to rent offices permanently in the town hall. And if we suddenly open up to, 100 or 200 Weight Watchers or something going through the building on a daily basis, it makes quite a difference to the amount of work, cleaning, and it compromises the safety of the permanent residents. So, and you're doing that for renting a room at £16 for an hour. It's not really cost effective, and it does compromise their health. So some of our tenants that have more employees than others are reluctant to return to the building because they don't believe that they can necessarily socially distance, and obviously people are now set up to work from home. So we're going to be in an interesting situation over the next few months. There are some who are very keen to get back into the building and some who are less keen, and we will have to manage that as we go along. Council owned land, we've had a number of interesting encroachment issues over the last few months, several of which are with the enforcement officers at Buckinghamshire Council. There have been some fences built along Steely's Walk, which have caused a huge number of complaints from residents. We were actually sort of on the case with some of that when they were being built, and did issue a letter straight away to say, please take this down. Unfortunately, it wasn't taken down. They completed building it, and seem to think that they've done the right things, but it is with enforcement and it's ongoing, and quite an issue. I'm continuing to, at the beginning of lockdown, I was moving ahead to look at encroachment issues at Malthouse Square. So there are a number of properties around Lakes Lane, Hedgley Lane, that over a number of years have encroached at the back of the trees and things at Malthouse Square. So we will be continuing to investigate that on a legal basis. I've been doing loads of legal stuff actually for the last while. Telecoms masts have been an ongoing issue. There was a change in the Telecommunications Act. We have 2 masts. One is at the Woburn Green Lane Sports Field and one is at the rugby club. They have sat there for a long time, and they did attract a certain amount of rent. The Telecommunications Act has slashed, or certainly halved, the potential rent that we can achieve from those. As part of the negotiations, I have managed to get them to rent review and to backdate a number of items, which is why our telecoms mast stuff income was showing slightly higher this year, but it will dwindle over the next few years as those are sorted. So the one at the rugby club is already signed, and their surveyor is paying or their provider is paying for the surveyor fees on that. And the same at Woburn Green Lane, but that one isn't, we haven't yet agreed a figure at Woburn Green Lane. They wanted to pay something like 20 quid a year, which, you know, down from £3 a year was a little bit nonsensical. So that's an ongoing one. The Butterfly Reserve, I'm working with them. Their tenancy is up, but the Open Spaces Committee and Nature Reserve Committee did agree to extend that. So I'm working with the lawyer on that. Town hall tenants we already talked about. Town hall hire, we're not in a position to hire anything because of the government guidance. It's worth noting that there's quite a lot of difference between sound bites on the telly and when you actually read the government guidance. It's really quite difficult to achieve sticking to the guidance. But if any of you do go to the town hall at the moment for anything, you'll see that there are stickers on the floor denoting your 2 metre different distances. We've got a one-way system for up and down the stairs. Only one person in the kitchen at a time, one person in the loos at a time. So again, this is manageable for our tenants, but it's not manageable because as soon as you open the door, and in fact, one of our tenants had the front door open recently. And so somebody just ducked in and said, oh, well, I'm just coming in to use the loo, which obviously we just can't do that at the moment. So that's that.
Sorry, can I say, are you aware that Adele seems to have spread out a little bit on the foyer, on the ground floor, with a bit of marketing? I don't know if that's
it's
something I noticed.
I'm not sure. I need to check exactly what's gone on there. We had a word about what was allowable for social distancing and what wasn't, and he has a tiny room, so it's very...
No, providing you're aware, that's fine. I didn't know if he was just sort of pushing his luck a bit, or whether that was accepted.
No, that's the issue with him wanting to have the door open. So I've actually suggested that the front door cannot be open, because people just treat it as a public building because they're used to treating it as a public building. They're used to using it as a cut through.
Yeah, of course.
But he likes to have the front door open, and thinks he'll attract passing trade. I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but yes, we are aware that there are
fine.
issues.
No, that's good.
So the town hall rent review is ongoing. Now that this is a throwback to South Bucks District Council. They have been trying to rent review us upwardly, quite an uplift for quite a while, which I have resisted because our building is becoming less and less marketable. So we are close to agreeing a minimum amount of uplift, and we are arguing because they're trying to backdate it for 5 years. But I have to resist that because, as I say, depending on what happens with Corona, I don't know how many tenants we'll have next year. So it's a difficult one. But I think what I would say in a positive light is I've started talking to people at the new Buckinghamshire Council on other asset matters, and it seems that, you know, the team is there and functioning and have a grasp of what's going on as these assets transfer, and some of the voices and faces are familiar. They're the same people that we were dealing with at South Bucks. So hopefully, once we can get our issue to the top of somebody's list, we will sort out the rent review on the town hall. On the roof, I don't know, Jeanette might be more up to date with the roof than me, but what I would say is we went through a number of the quotes that we had, offering to the next person on the list who was not able to do it for a number of reasons, and we've ended up with the most expensive one on the list, but we told him that we wanted it for the price that we wanted it for, and he's accepted the job, and they're starting today, I think. Is it today, Jeanette? Can't hear you.
Sorry. Scaffolding's up and they're starting in earnest tomorrow, and it will take them 7 working days-ish, and they might work at the weekend because they need to work around the rain.
Okay. So we're not having a Rolls-Royce job done on the roof. We're just getting it fixed so that the water is not pouring in the way that it was before. So hopefully that will see us through to the end of our lease. And then the final thing is the Old Town toilets, which I mentioned that they're not open at the moment, but we did get our initial designs on the refurb to go for dementia-friendly toilets. It does seem that dementia-friendly and coronavirus are not entirely compatible. And so Jeanette and I have had quite a long conversation about this, and I have briefly spoken to the designer to say, would they review the design with a view to a different sort of emphasis, so that perhaps we have less loos. It's not that the loos are overrun there. We don't have queues of people waiting for the loo, but it might be an idea to have less toilets, but that each toilet is self-contained with a hand basin in it. And then that becomes very clear for anyone with dementia. They know all the things. They're not having to find their way out. It doesn't need signage and that sort of thing. So, so we're having a redo on that. But whilst the toilets are closed, I was hoping at this meeting or even last month we would have been out to tender and had the quotes in and be selecting a contractor at this point. But unfortunately we are a bit behind on that. And that's that one.
Okay, thanks. Unless anyone's got any more comments to make on item 8, then I'm afraid, Alexa, I'm going to have to ask you again for an update on these certificates of lawfulness.
That's okay. So I just want to say, all of you people saying that I'm sitting at home, what am I doing? I'm very, very busy, as you can tell. Certificates of lawfulness. So the drinking fountain, we're going a little bit round in circles on this at the moment, but it is with Buckinghamshire Council and it is in process, but there are people on holiday at the moment. So I met with them probably a month ago, if not more, and I know that Alex has been meeting with the drinking fountain people. So I met with Buckinghamshire Council, and where we're at is I can't complete the certificate of lawfulness without the permission of the landowner, which is something that we've been discussing in community meetings for probably the last year. And I think the drinking fountain people thought that they had the permission of the landowner, being South Bucks, but they didn't appear to have anything in writing. So Buckinghamshire Council don't have anything in writing, but we are working on that. They did write to me. They are going to have to issue a license for this thing, and they wanted certain assurances from the town council. I agreed to most of them, but not all of them, and explained my reasons why. And they think that they can deal with my query and move ahead. So I'm hoping that when Simon, I think it is, comes back in the asset team from holiday, that will move ahead, and then I can just get the certificate of lawfulness lodged. They don't seem to be turning around that quickly at the moment, but we can see. So on to the second one, I also have a certificate of lawfulness application in for the piece of art at the War Memorial. I was hoping that was going to be determined today. The date of determination was today, but I did check several times during the day and I don't have anything yet, but I don't think that there's going to be any issue with it. I have been in contact with the officers a number of times and they seemed fairly relaxed about it. So
can I ask for a timeline? Is it possible on the drinking fountain? Are we going to be realistically from your waiting for this Simon chap and South and Bucks to get themselves into order? Could be September, October time?
Well, He was saying August, for at least for me to be able to put it in, because he copied in his boss or his colleague and saying, I'm going on holiday for 2 weeks, but I'm copying in so-and-so who will progress this in my
Good.
absence. But
Yeah.
I would say it has been a month probably.
Could we follow up on that? Is it
yeah.
possible? Just a
Yeah.
letter or an email just to say, could you?
Yeah.
These things have a habit of being pushed aside a little bit, don't they?
Yes, I mean, I think to be fair to Bucks, they are, you know, they've had a hell of a transition into the new unitary authority, and with lots of staff diverted onto Corona activity as well. So it's been challenging in every direction, and staff have not necessarily been in the jobs that they were expecting to be in. So I will get an update on that. And I will also update the water fountain people, or I'll update you and you can talk to them if you're.
Yeah, both would be fine. Thanks.
So,
Okay, thanks. I think we'll move on to item 10. And Jeanette, you have prepared 2 documents, one of which is a very comprehensive report on the community bus, and also a number of recommendations that will be put in front of the full council next week. Would you like to give us a sort of a brief flavour of it all?
Yes. So the community bus has been running since the end of February 2019, so just over a year, because it stopped in March due to COVID. And it's been very well received. We've got about 14 volunteers who are still on board and very enthusiastic. And I suppose it's time for us to, so we obviously stopped the community bus due to COVID. The 1 year's trial was extended slightly and was going to end at the end of May. And of course, that's been and gone. And the hire bus, community bus that we had, has been returned for technical reasons. It's not suitable for us to extend that hire. And it is now, I suppose, time for the town council to decide whether we want to restart a community bus trial or not. So hence I prepared, with a lot of hard work from the volunteer bus drivers and conductors, a report about what's happened over the year and how we all think it should be taken forward. And that's, I believe, been shared by you from Alexa, shared it round. And also a very brief overview report from myself. So just to recap the headline numbers, the whole cost for running the community bus trial is just under 15.5K plus my time, which gives us a surplus of around £1,900. And the social return on investment is over £400,000 a year. So in those terms, quite a good thing to have done. If we continue with the bus, we've done a lot of number crunching. If we continue with the bus in round terms, it costs us plus officer time 10 grand a year. That's petrol, insurance, those running costs. And then there is the capex, the buying or the leasing of the bus, which is either going to be around 9,000 a year to lease a vehicle, or you buy a minibus for around 29 grand. So if we did a trial for another year, which is the recommendation, to really ramp up and see if we can get a lot more passengers and trips. And part of that is also maybe adding a Wednesday to run to go to Dunelm and Tesco, which all the volunteers think is a really good idea, as do I. With a lot of PR, we could see if we can really ramp up. It's been very successful. I think we've had in the year over 1,500 trips. So that's pretty good. So it is well received, and people keep asking me, when is it coming back? So in summary, if we need to decide if we want to continue with a bus trial for another year and see what the progress is. And then if we want to do that, how do we go about it? And the recommendation is to buy a bus for 29k. If after a year the town council decides that that is not for us, there isn't the numbers, there isn't the uptake, there isn't the interest, we would be able to sell that bus for around 23k. So in effect, the lease would have only cost us £6,000 as opposed to a straight lease, which would have cost us £9,000. Okay, so obviously there's more detail in all the documentation that you will have seen, but that is basically it. Do you have any questions?
Can I just ask you, has there been any consideration in your sort of research, as it were, to bringing the community bus sort of into play at sort of start and close of the working day, with a view to establishing some kind of traffic and income from commuters who are primarily going to the station?
Yes. In short, our volunteers don't want to do a red eye, okay? Do an early morning commute. But if we had our own bus and then weren't limited with mileage and one thing or another, we could, if we felt it appropriate, employ someone to do the early morning commuter shift, if at some time that's what we felt was worthwhile.
Okay, I mean, reason for saying this is more to do with the actual sort of impact on traffic around the new town, and the station in particular, at start and end of day, as opposed to actually trying to make any money out of it. Although I'm sure that probably having a full-time driver might be less expensive than what might come from revenue. I don't know.
I mean, I would imagine that it would probably be a loss-making venture to have a paid driver to do those shifts, because I don't think the revenue would cover it all. And you have to remember that if you're using the train, you're going to be comparing with a taxi, which is very flexible, and all the parking. So it has to be below those two for it to be attractive to anyone to go on a bus. So it's not clear cut, and it would need a lot of analysis, but my guess is that it would be loss making, but how much, I don't know.
Okay. Anita.
Thank you. Well, obviously, I don't think you're ever going to make money on a community bus. It's a community asset. It's not really going to make profit. But if you are going to rent it out to groups, one thing to bear in mind is the new regulations that have come in for passenger transport of anyone with special needs. You can only transport, and that's elderly or young. We would be limited if we didn't comply with these regulations. They're called PSVAR, and they're coming in 1 year, and you have to be wheelchair accessible. You have to have a lowered ramp, and obviously you have to have proper constraining seat belts. So I would suggest, I think it's a marvelous asset to have the bus. I would suggest we rent for a year because the new regulations will come in 1 year, and our the bus we buy would be different to the bus we might buy this year.
Can I come back on that? That particular regulation applies to buses with over 22 or 22 and over passengers.
But it
And-
applies to taxis as well, so it does.
Okay. But
We can look into it.
we
just
can look into it, but our community bus would end up having wheelchair access at the back. The
yeah,
only thing is, doing that as a public transport, getting in and out would be quite awkward. But the regulations, as I saw it, applied to over 22. But again, as you say, if we're hiring one, or
Yeah.
if we're doing something for a year, we can review. But I
Yeah.
think if we purchased a bus, we would want to make it as usable by lots of community groups as
Yeah.
possible, and have wheelchair access anyway.
exactly. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Hogan.
Good evening. Sorry everyone for being a little late this morning, this evening. 6 o'clock was a bit early for me. Somebody's got a telephone. Could somebody answer their telephone? It's probably this mysterious Alexa Collins who's a dot in the corner.
No, I've
Um,
already taken the cat out.
Yeah,
It's,
sorry. The interesting thing about the community bus was that these various other options, like people getting taxis or dial-a-ride, all probably would work out to be more cost effective. But I noticed the one particular thing in the report is the fact that the users, and I don't know how many users there are, I think, are we talking about 70 regular users, something like that? About 70 regular users, is that they do see it as an important social function. And therefore, you know, it's a bit like, well, running a coffee morning or the pub, is that these people actually are getting out and about. They're not just going to the shops, you know, like on dial-a-ride or a taxi. They are actually getting a more comprehensive well-being service, if you like, and it's helping, you know, people get out. It's encouraging people to come out because they're hoping to see people they might know. So, you know, as you say, it's never going to be a loss leader. The figures, I know you're talking about growing the membership, but for every old age pensioner, and we seem to be predominantly carrying old age pensioners, how much do we get back from Buckinghamshire Council? I mean, if it's a £1 fare, what do we get back? Is it 40p or something?
76p, I think.
It's 76p. Oh, right. Okay. So the whatever it is, the anticipated 1,000.
Now you've all thrown numbers at me. I've gone blank, but I want to say 65p. You know,
Right.
65p in a pound.
Well, that's right. As I was just saying, you've got 1,275 individuals on the bus, and you're projecting £1,000 income from those fares. So, yeah, so that's roughly right. You're obviously hoping to get a few more people, but yeah, it is mostly elderly people. The thing I was a little worried about was the routing. I mean, for example, if on the Tuesday, people who want to go from Hotspur to the Tuesday market, now, instead of the bus used to go direct, now they've got to go into the new town and come back out again. Because you've taken the Wattleton Road loop out, haven't you?
For the new route, yes. I mean, you know, you're talking about 10-15 minutes of inconvenience, but we can't go everywhere and make a short journey for every area, and it also needs to be memorable.
Is Wattleton Road not memorable? Is Wattleton Road not memorable?
Well, Wattleton Road doesn't pick up anybody, so some routes have been changed because we've picked areas where there hasn't been the football, and Wattleton Road can walk arguably to the market. Alexa?
Right.
Yeah.
Can I just make an observation before passing over to the town clerk? I mean, I think one needs to be mindful of the fact that things are changing, and over time, you know, Whittleton Road will be more important in the equation. So let's not lose sight of that. Alexa.
What I was going to make 2 points, one of which I should have made right at the start, that this committee is not making a decision on this, because I think it's a big issue which needs to go to the town council. But I also think, because this committee is the finance committee, I think you're in a good position to understand what's gone on with it so far, and to make, I apologise for Clive, but he's here. I think you're in a good position to make a recommendation to the full council about this, and because Jeanette had the report ready and they've done quite a lot of analysis, it was worth getting it out there to the next committee that we had available. And the other thing I was just going to say on Patrick's comment, what we did with the trial was, in the first half, or the first section, there were surveys and interviews and analysis done, and the route change was as a result of the feedback that we got in the first half, and the take up of the bus did go up in the second half. But I think Jeanette's aware that that might have simply been passage of time and people becoming aware of it, or it could have been that the change of days, the fact that it did correlate with the market. And as you quite rightly point out, I mean, some people, certainly that I've spoken to, one lady in particular, when I said, where do you go? You know, where do you get on and where do you get off? She said, oh, sometimes I just go round twice. So she doesn't get off at all. She just gets on for the crack. And, you know, and that's really invaluable. The other thing I wanted to say, there were comments after we put in the report a while ago, including the social impact analysis report for L&Q, and there was some sort of disbelief, or those figures can't be right, even though Jeanette and I had tested them many times. I did actually go and do the proper course on that calculator, which is an industry leading calculator, and I even persuaded them to do some analysis on our particular report. And they basically said the reason it looks so amazing for what we've done is, one, because Jeanette did it on a shoestring, and two, because we very deliberately didn't include the officer time. And a lot of that time was the initial setup, which, as Jeanette's pointed out, the running costs year on year, now that it is set up, now that we do have a license, now that all these things are in place, are less than those first few months did take a huge amount of officer time, and we're aware of that. So we didn't count it in those figures, but quite clearly, because of the type of passenger that we attract, as Patrick said, it is all about well-being, and that calculator is entirely based on well-being statistics and happiness statistics, based on improvement of life.
Can I just, I had one or two other questions, if I could have just finished my questions, because they might be relevant for other people. They were specifically about, may I do that, please, Chairman?
Yes, yeah.
Sorry, just a general observation is that there's no councillor on the working group, and yet I believe now, we were hoping, I think at one time, that the bus might be picked up by an outside body, by, I don't know, Better Connected Beaconsfield or somebody else. I know we keep calling this a trial, but if the council did decide to buy a bus for the next 5 years, it's obviously not a trial, is it? It is actually a service that the council has decided to run. So I don't know where we're going there, because obviously if that's the intention, I think we should make that clear, that it is going to be the council. You know, we're not going to find anybody to run the bus for us, and it might be a good idea if there was at least a councillor somewhere actually on the working group, rather than obviously the only connection at the moment is Jeanette, who is obviously not a councillor. That was just an observation. The routing about Tesco's, the bus used to go up into Knotty Green, which was Penn Parish, because we were borrowing a bus. I don't know whether there was ever any discussion with, as a matter of courtesy, with Penn Parish. Now, of course, we're talking about going into, well, I guess Chepping Wye or somewhere. Again, it might be a courtesy to speak to those parishes. There was a suggestion in the report that there might actually be people jumping on the bus at Loudwater to come into Beaconsfield Centre to spend their money. So again, if there is any sort of mutual benefit with Chepping Wye, it might be a good idea to have that discussion. And obviously, through the community boards, Anita and Katrina Wood are very close together. So I think that's just a matter of courtesy. We're still talking about a diesel bus, which I know is not necessarily consistent with green aspirations. And the occupancy of the bus, if I don't know when it's likely we think we could restart, but it's quite foreseeable that one is still going to be hampered with social distancing. If you've only got a 17-seater bus, you may actually not be able to get more than, I don't know, 8 people on it. So I think that's a consideration.
Okay, listen, Patrick, those are all very good.
Well, I just think that they'd be
useful
helpful for
points.
those points to come out before it goes to council, because if they're asking council, we're going to be bouncing the report back again. You know.
Well, I think I would say to you, and I still want to hear from Philip Barsterman, but I would just say to you that I think that in principle, we may well say to the full council that we would like to see, you know, the trial continuing as and when it is safe to do so. And we may well have some caveats to apply at that time. But I think at this point, it's a question of whether or not in principle we want to give it another shot, or whether we think it's not worth doing. Philip, could you come in with your comments?
Yeah, Jeanette, I've got a question and then a couple of comments, but Jeanette, you mentioned that there was a surplus of £1,900. Is that above and beyond what was budgeted for, or is that relative? Are you saying there was a revenue of £17,000, we therefore made a £1,900 net benefit?
The £1,900 is when I take away all our costs and all the donations and funding that we've had. That's the number you come up with.
So that is net of revenue and funding and so forth. Can we have some of those kind of numbers and that breakdown in the report that goes to council, please? Because at the moment we've got the volumes, we've got some total cost numbers, we've got some in the Air 10K cost for continuation, but I think it would be good to have some of the detailed numbers, because we've been doing it for years, so we should know what those numbers are. And it sounds like you do know, Jeanette, as I would expect, but it would be good to see all that information in the report in more depth.
There is some information in the report, but Alexa's got a hand up.
I do have my hand up because I think we did put some interim, sort of one page together in probably community and safety quite a few months ago now, so it needs updating. Also, that surplus that Jeanette's talking about is assuming that the town council puts in the full amount of match funding that it committed to, which at the moment I've been a bit skinflint and I've held back about £2,000. So I've got it as a break-even project. Jeanette's showing it as, because she's showing her full amount that we committed to. So she's showing a 1,700 surplus. So that's a kind of a year-end question of whether we leave the surplus in the bus or whether I claw it back into our, because that would put me into deficit on the town council.
Philip, did you want to carry on?
Yeah, I want to carry on. So I think we do need to see that information, and I think also to understand where all the money's come from, the different sources, and so forth. So I just think we need to see that analysis. You've got it, Alexa, and it just needs updating. That would be good. But I think in a report that's asking the council to invest, that's necessary. I mean, I think in terms of the cost, you're talking about £10 per journey as a cost. So actually, if that's correct, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeanette, but it's £16,000 for 1,600 journeys. So that's about £10 a journey. Actually, it'd be cheaper to pay for a taxi, but I think it's better to see the numbers before being able to comment further on that. But so I think that analysis would be good. I think also understanding how the costs are going to be met. Is this intention that we will fund the whole £10,000 or £20,000, or is there additional monies coming in from other sources, Jeanette?
Well, that's how much it costs. If we apply, like we have done in the past, for funding, then obviously the cost to the town council would reduce.
But do you have that in mind? What's that going to be?
I have not applied for any funding because until the town council decides to continue with the bus, it would be inappropriate for me to do so.
Okay, we should hear from the town clerk at this point.
The funding model would really, we had quite an extensive meeting last year with L&Q before they funded as much as they did, and they funded about 5,000 of the 15,000. If there'll be two different approaches, but if we had a bus and we've dealt with the capex, then we're looking at the running costs. And again, I think that L&Q, Waitrose, Sunrise, there are people in the town who have funded this and who like to support it because they have people who benefit from it. I think it would be a match funding situation, or it could even be fully funded by contributions from the community and from community organisations. Alternatively, if you look at getting the capex funded as well, then you'd be going to Heathrow Community Fund or some other types of organisation, but their funding model will not fund running expenses. They will only fund the capex of the project. So we need to, I think, as Alistair says, see if the council has the appetite to move ahead with the project, and then I can make the recommendations of how we go forward accordingly. But it's whether, I mean, I take your point about £10 a journey is not cost effective, but as Anita said, this is never going to be a cost effective. This is about a well-being issue, not a cost effective issue. But
I think my point wasn't it's not cost effective. I think that my point was they could all get a taxi and it would be cheaper for us. So you end up with the same outcome. And I get, so that's my concern. So I think there's a lot more information that we need before we can make a decision, I would say. I mean, we can make a decision in principle, but a decision to spend the money, I think we need to get all of this stuff that you're talking about, Alex, we need to get that pinned down a bit better.
Chris.
I was just thinking with the bus, I think there's no point starting it again until COVID is over, because, we'll struggle with it anyway. And I'm not saying, I think it could be a good thing, and I'm listening to Philip, and we need to look at that. But I think, there's no point restarting the bus till we're back to normal, whenever that is. But that's my view.
Anita?
Well, just finally, on the well-being aspect of the bus, which is the most important thing, really, which is what Patrick alluded to. And we haven't mentioned, there's a driver on the bus. There's also a conductor. Do we call them conductors, Jeanette? Yeah. And that conductor is really a signposter to well-being. And I think if we were to record and they have been recorded financially by the social outcomes, if we were to record the well-being outcomes for people just from having conversations with the conductor or with each other, or knowing something that's going on in the town, I mean, £10 a journey is cheap, actually, to provide all that for people who are not getting it any other way. And that's all I really want to say.
Jeanette.
And just coming quickly back to a couple of Patrick's points. Yes, I do liaise with Penn Parish about the bus, so they are aware. We haven't had the passenger numbers at all around the north. loop, which is why it has been removed. And yes, I would love a green bus, but even though you know that my credentials mean I really would love a green bus, but I've had to think hard and think we're not ready for that yet, because it would be quite a significant investment, and I mean significant. And with regards to starting, yes, we can't start now, and I don't know hand on heart when we can start, because we have to consider the well-being of my bus drivers and conductors, and of course complying with all the other things that you need to comply with. So really, from my point of view as operating the bus, knowing whether there's an opportunity that we want to restart is quite important, because if you said to me today, Jeanette, crack on, make this happen, I would say we would not be able to have the bus up and running for, let's say, 3 months, so that I got everything done. So I need 3 months notice in a way to do that.
I think it would probably be a fair summary of what we've heard so far, to say that the members present this evening are still supportive in principle of the community bus, and that we should equip ourselves with some of the extra pieces of information that have been discussed before the opportunity comes to actually bring it back into play. So I would sort of suggest that, as far as the town council is concerned, next week, that we should give that kind of a summary statement, and that we are still in the game. Okay. Right, I think if that is all on item 10, do we have any requests for expenditure?
Yes,
Item 11.
we do have one grant application that came in, which you should all have a copy of, which I'm rifling through my papers to find, which was from the Beaconsfield Society, who have applied for a grant to assist with their Buy in Beaconsfield initiative. So they've been working quite hard on this, doing lots of social media and connecting businesses into it. They've been working, I believe, with our Business for Beaconsfield with Tonya. I don't know if Chris has been involved in that, or whether it's just Tonya that's been dealing with it. And what they would like to do is they've put forward a request. They've got, they want to do these vinyl window stickers to put in the various businesses who are taking part, to put in their shop windows. So they've got a quote, which I have sent to you. She says, desperately trying to look for it at the moment, which was for, I think, £426 off the top of my head. Let's see. It's 355 plus VAT, it appears to be. So actually, whilst they may have applied for more, it's the net of that figure that we are looking at, and that's really the sum of it.
Okay. Do any of the members have any comments they'd like to make? Patrick?
You say they're working with Beaconsfield for Business. Now, is Beaconsfield for Business now operating independently, or is it still a council working group? I'm not sure about that. Is it? Do we know?
Well,
do we know?
Yes, it's just a question of which one of us wants to answer you. I think that the answer is that Beaconsfield for Business is working quite independently. However, I know that Chris involved in giving support, as I have been involved in giving support. However, the two organisations are probably doing slightly things, even though they are complementary. One is networking, and the other is concerned with buying locally. And I think the two are actually working hand in hand and quite closely together. The Beaconsfield for Business does not have any funds of its own. And what the Beaconsfield Society are asking for here is some assistance with, I suppose we could call it signage, in terms of creating an awareness amongst shopkeepers and retailers locally that there is this opportunity. And I would like to think that over time, there could be some introduction of something similar to the Windsor and Maidenhead Advantage card, which could be used locally by residents to encourage the purchase of items from local shops.
I think if we refer back to the town plan, there were these sort of ideas of buying locally and so on, which you know are all commendable things. I'm just how exactly does this buying Beaconsfield work? I mean, who does some organisation somewhere compile a list of who's in and who's out, or how does it work? I'm not clear. I would hate to think the town council gave money to somebody to promote, say, 10 businesses and ignore the rest. That's all.
No, it wouldn't work like that.
Well, I don't know.
No, I've been to a few of these meetings, and they're very good. They're local businesses who are striving to just try and keep a link and to keep Beaconsfield functioning as best as it can, especially more now than ever. It's not a sort of close-knit secret society. It is a good organisation. And what we're doing is, at this time especially, I think we need to, providing that the protocol is correct, which is what you're questioning, is that we need to support where we can, Patrick, I think.
Well, no, what I'm asking is, what are we supporting? Is we're supporting printing some leaflets?
Some stickers to put in shop windows, just to let people know that these businesses are functioning and that are looking for business and are supporting each other in effect.
So for a start, it's only people who've got a shop window.
Not necessarily.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Is you're saying it's stickers to stick in a shop window? So are we? I mean, it's great.
I think the details. I understand you want the details, but I think initially it's a push to try and help organisations and businesses get functioning again, whether they stick them on their front windows or in their car windows or wherever it is. It's a community project for business.
Well, can I just ask? Alexa said that we talk about match funding. So if we're saying we're going 50-50 with the Beaconsfield Society, presumably whatever these leaflets or stickers are, they'll be branded Beaconsfield Society or Buy in Beaconsfield or whatever it's called, and Town Council. Are we? I mean,
I don't know.
Well, these
we could ask for that.
Yeah. I mean,
that's quite a typical thing to do, and I think what they're doing, the stickers are only one part of a considerably larger body of activity that they've been doing for. They've been doing it. They started it during lockdown quite a while ago.
Well, I mean, I'll just say something which you can decide whether it's relevant or not, but South Bucks District Council did give the Beaconsfield Society a grant of £690 towards Beaconsfield Now for this year, which of course they have cancelled. So they do have money there. They obviously could approach Beaconsfield Council and ask to repurpose that money or some of that money towards this project. I'm not saying the town council doesn't want to put some money in as well, but I'm just saying it's not as if they have no money.
They did actually make a loss in the last 12 months.
What do you mean they made a loss?
Beaconsfield Society made a loss in the last 12 months.
Well, that's neither here nor there, is it?
Well, what I'm saying is if you read the accounts, that's what...
Why would I read the accounts? I'm a town councillor. I'm not a member of the Beaconsfield Society.
Because it's part of our grant awarding process. So I've included the accounts with the grant application.
I think
So
it's worth.
They've lost money. I'm surprised they've lost money with I'm surprised they've lost money.
But that's not what we're here to talk about.
Well, no, we're always being asked to give public money to an organisation, and now the justification is because they've lost some money. They need some more from the town council.
That's not the justification. The town clerk told you what the justification is. And the justification is that part of the process which we have put in place requires people who are looking for support to give copies of their accounts. And if you go back, many years, sorry, can I finish my sentence?
No. Can I ask the
Patrick, let me
clerk?
finish
Can I ask the clerk the purpose of asking for the accounts?
I'm sorry. I'm chairing the meeting and I'm asking you to be quiet for a minute. If you go back many, many years, we repeatedly refused to give money to Dial-A-Ride because they were giving us bank account details with over £90,000 in their account. And we obviously took the view that what they were asking us to provide was not justified. Now, I'm not saying to you that the Beaconsfield Society can't afford it, but they've come with a proposal that we are attempting to evaluate and consider.
What I would say is our grant, this is our new grant awards process. It's pretty normal type of thing. It is normal practice to ask for accounts. I also have to produce accounts when I apply for funding, and if people turned around and said, oh, but you've got loads of money in reserves, then we would never get funding for anything. Much of the aspect of making money go further these days and of grant funding is to have things match funded, and so it is quite a typical thing. Whether you might want someone's accounts to know whether they're solvent or if they're trading or whatever. There are different reasons why you would need to do it. It's just part of our process, and it you know, they have offered their accounts and they are being transparent about it. As I say, I only realised just as I was looking at it that they've sort of for us the cost would be less than what they're charging, because they've included the VAT amount. So it's not a huge amount. It is helping support in a corona environment where I know that Bucks Council are also trying to stimulate various different activities to stimulate the high street.
Actually, and on that particular note, as Anita knows, is that I think COVID grants are still available through the community board. There was an
There'll be a whole different pandemic by the time that comes out. There'll be a whole different pandemic by the time someone's applied for that and got it. We're talking less than 400 quid here. I would have thought as a town council we could actually justify spending that money quite easily without having to argue over the toss over it. To be honest, it's a sensible thing they're trying to do, and I think it would show good spirit if we actually joined in with them for it. I mean, we invented B2B in the first place, so I think that we should be supporting it wholeheartedly. Get us some good kudos for the council. Get our name actually on the sticker. If we're going to put the money in, we ask for our name to be on the sticker. I have no problem with that, and I'm sure they won't either. But we just do it. It's a no-brainer. I don't understand so much debate over it, to be honest.
Okay, so the question is whether or not they have met the requirements of the grant procedure, and I think, Alexa, you need to tell me.
Yeah, I think that it looks okay. I mean, we do say that we would only fund 50% of any project. I think in this case it is rather open to interpretation, because I think they've chosen something that they can ask for funding on. There has been some iteration on this, because unfortunately when they first came to me I kind of threw them out on their ear and said no, come back to me with something I can work with, and to be fair, they have come back and they have filled in the form and they've provided everything that I've asked for. So I think they have satisfied.
Anita?
Well, I think we've got to look at the initiative they're asking for money for too. This is an excellent community initiative. It's something we could do as a town council. We should be supporting our businesses, regenerating the high street. It's our job to do that. And if they're taking it on for a pretty modest sum, I think we should jolly well support them. I really do.
Okay. Are we in favour of supporting?
Yes.
Generally, yes.
Yes.
In favour?
I'm in favour of supporting it in line with the council's policy.
So what you're saying, Patrick, is that you would go for 50%, yeah?
Yeah. I don't
Right.
see that's a problem.
And Alexa felt that perhaps under the circumstances we could be more generous. What's the view of everybody else? Is everybody else in favour of going 100% or not?
I'm happy with 100%.
100%. This is recovery. 100%.
Philip, do you have a view?
Yeah, I think so. I got cut off earlier, ran out of gas.
Yeah, Chloe.
100%. Yeah, it's fine. I just agree with Clive that it needs to give prominent mention to the town council as being one of the 3 organisations that's supporting this initiative. But I agree with everybody really, and particularly that it's something we should be doing.
Okay, then it's approved. Okay. Right.
And I'll write to them and ask if we can have the logo as would normally be done.
Yeah, I think there is an example of the proposed signage in the pack somewhere. So it's just a question of looking at it and then saying add it if it's not there.
I think it should say sponsored by Beaconsfield Town Council, particularly if we're paying 100%, it shouldn't just be the logo.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do we know how many stickers they want for their, how many we're
250.
getting? 250. Right.
250.
Okay,
They're quite
can I-
cheap, I think.
Patrick,
Chairman, can I just ask, as you're obviously heavily involved in the business initiative, are you aware of this from the business initiative is businesses in Beaconsfield are supporting this?
yes, I mean,
They are involved.
I mean, we've talked about Beaconsfield for business, but we also, I think you were out of the room at the time, that you've got 2 organisations, one of which is focused on the buy local aspect, and the other one is more interested in getting businesses to network with each other and to share information and knowledge. But they are important sort of pillars, as it were, of the business community in total, which we are trying to support. And as Councillor Hogan mentioned much earlier on, this all came out in the Vision for Beaconsfield project in 2015, 2016. So although it's sort of taken a long time to happen, it's, you know, and it's an evolution and a progression from where we were 4 years ago. Okay. Right, so we have reached the end of part 1. Do we have a date for the next meeting or not at this point?
I don't at the moment.
Okay.
Sorry. We're being fairly fluid on dates. I don't think I'm expecting any particular new government guidance, but I don't think we're going to be meeting other than on Zoom anytime this year, really.
Right, okay. On the basis that there is no AOB, I'm going to thank the press and the public for attending, and we should take maybe a 2-minute gap whilst you turn off your YouTube feed.